Welcome yet again to another live. Today we are going to be starting what I call AITA Mondays. Can a marriage be destroyed by just posting on social media? Previously, we've done segments and we've discussed about how social media, AI, and technology has really infiltrated and become such an integral part of our relationships. But now, today, I've decided that I want us to actually start repairing relationships and look at real life situations to find out exactly what to do. How do we deal with real life situations that are in front of us? Because again, I ask this question: if we are going to be reaching out for each other, if human spaces are going to be the most valued spaces in this next dispensation, are we ready for that? And my answer is no, especially because of social media. And so, because of that, I decided why not look at real life situations from our very good old Reddit stories and see how we can work through some of these issues to really lay down a foundation for us to learn how to relate again. So, tonight we're looking at how social media can actually step inside a real marriage, not just an affair, not anything necessarily physically bad outside of the fact that a simple act of posting stories, not even about your personal life too much, can actually affect a relationship, can actually affect your marriage. And I guess my question is, when does sharing become disrespectful? So, with that, I want to go ahead and share my screen with you and read this Reddit post. Now, it's a little bit too long. I'm going to try and cut it short, but hopefully, we can work through some of these issues and really identify what's going on here in society. So, here we go. The question and the post goes: we are about to end our marriage due to her Facebook stories. Okay, I do think that there might be a little bit of hyperbole here, but when you read on in the Reddit story, you will realize that it's really not just about Facebook stories, that there's definitely something deeper than that. So here goes. The reader writes: Hi Reddit, I just wanted to ask. I have nowhere to vent and ask opinions already, as my friends already gave me their 2 cents, but I do still need confirmation. I did really want to try and read this without commentary, but it's quite a long post and thought I'd probably just give in my 2 cents while I go. So already I've noticed I have nowhere to vent. So for me, that's already an alarm to say, okay, well, we're gonna need spaces, safe spaces for people who are in marriages to be able to vent outside of a therapist. But anyway, I, 32, am male, and my wife, 32, F for female, had a heated argument over her Facebook posts and stories. And then he goes on with this spiel. He says, I'm currently debating as to am I really the bad person in our relationship? And he goes, for context, I reacted strongly because I got fed up with her stories and posts. My wife loves watching cheating dramas, dramas where the male is always cheating and loves it. It's like, it's been like that even before we got married and had kids, and it always creeps into our conversation. The standard hypothetical questions and jokes about me having another woman in my life. Now, mind you, I am a two, and a two, well, had to blip out the, you know, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you. Oh dear, no, my bad. She was an eight before marriage, but became a six after. Now that I look at her as a six, not that I look at her as a six, but I'm doing this as to let you guys imagine, as I do not believe numbers can define anyone objectively. That's just diabolical. That's funny. Now, the reason I'm asking the internet is because lately she keeps on posting stories about cheating, like a woman being strong, giving her husband the carry ons and showing him the pictures of his infidelity. I know, very specific, but that's basically almost all her stories and telling the guys to get lost. For me, that's alarm bells. I think outside of just posting, I think that what you watch is very important. The mind is such a powerful tool, and you are creating neural pathways and creating a habit of thinking and also literally altering who you become. So, also, just what you consume online and when you're on social media for me is a very, very, I think we need to guard our minds jealously in terms of what we let in. Because over time, you find yourself acting crazy and then you wonder why you're acting crazy. And I would say, take an audit of what you're taking in, have an audit of what you've been watching. And she's been watching these things. And I mean, it's pretty interesting why she would choose those kind of shows. I digress. Anyway, so it says, I got fed up with all the stories mainly because we already had a conversation about social media. We agreed to be private about our married life and our kids' life as we want us to grow as a family, not needing social media approval and the like. I agree. I just find it toxic and dangerous to post everything about our life and our marriage, and most specifically our kids, as it might get unwanted attention from the kind of people you never want to be in the same room with. I totally support that. And this is another thing. These are the other layers that are also, I want people to be very cognizant of when you're dealing with social media posts. It's privacy and safety. A lot of people say, well, what's the big deal about being private? You have nothing to hide. And I'm like, no, there are creepy people out there. And so you need to live your life in such a way, especially if you have kids, that you protect them from such creeps in life. Anyway, for another context, I was essayed when I was 12 while I was doing charity work for our church, and the assaulter even had the audacity to go to our home afterwards. My mother back then went nuclear and had him in cuffs and was charged with and child abuse and violence against women and children. I'm not from the US. We have this law. Hence, my heightened vigilance against those types of people and my need for privacy. Totally agree with that. I really support that. I do agree with that. Anyway, now with the story in question, I got mad, really mad. Okay. Because, well, we are married, and her posting things about cheating does not just breach our agreement about being private about our life, it also portrays that I am a cheating lowlife. Okay. And this point is actually very important because number one, perception. Like these days, people don't believe innocent until proven guilty anymore. It's just the perception, a lot of the times, is actually more powerful than reality. It's just amazing how impactful social media is. And then it says, and my point was proven when one of her friends asked, what's up? And I was doing anything wrong, in which she just said, she just shares stories for people to learn from. She stood on what she believed was harmless posts. So I said, okay, if that's harmless, then I will also post things that will make people question your dignity. So I posted something about being a narcissist as well. Okay. I didn't mean to laugh. Oh dear. Okay, I'm not being judgmental. This is actually a very serious issue, but I can't help but laugh. My bad. I'm sorry. She got so mad and started saying, you want this marriage to end like this and give this gift to our kids, huh? Our eldest have been having his party this weekend. I'm posting this in spite of me wanting privacy as I really have nowhere else to go. So, yeah, Reddit. I read a lot of stories here. The internet is a great place to get opinions no matter what they may be. And maybe I can just get a decent advice or opinion on this matter here for added context. So, okay, so I have to stop here. Yeah. Before everybody just jumps out and starts judging, I mean, I'm going to definitely add my commentary more towards the end. But this is just the reality of relationships, right? Human beings, we're messy. And I would say we can be petty, but in this particular situation, I always want to be objective and really consider all sides of the stories. And obviously, some of these Reddit posts, it's sometimes difficult to consider just what you would say just because there's a lot of context, there's a lot of information that you don't have. But just at first blush and face value, I'm going off of what I read. And before people jump out to say he shouldn't have done that, which I agree, he probably shouldn't have done that, I can understand the sentiment because sometimes it takes you being dramatic in order for somebody to get your attention. Yeah, I did think that it was a bit funny that he did post that. But I want to note something here, and this is what I don't agree with, especially when it comes to relationships, is that it's always easy to be the one doing something until it's done to you. And I think that if you're going to be in relationships, humility is going to be an absolute must and a foundation for relationships. It's and when you are in a relationship, I always say love protects. Are we going to offend each other? Of course. Are you going to upset each other? Of course. But I think that for me, this post is not necessarily about her posting Reddit post more than it is about a real underlying issue of just self, right? Self. And even though you don't necessarily agree with something, if something is important to your partner, as serious as that, considering the history, considering the context, I think that it is really important for you to take note of it and to listen. I think we really don't listen a lot in relationships until something drastic happens. And it's not necessary. It's really not necessary. And I don't think that his request is invalid. I really don't think so. But anyway, let me continue and read on. And so she said, and also, I do think that that response to say, okay, you want this marriage to end like this, it's pretty bizarre because literally she's doing the same thing, the exact same thing, and that she can't see it. And this is definitely, I mean, my issue. Now, I don't mind that she can't see it as long as when pointed out that she's doing the same thing, she's willing to concede and to admit. But most times it's not. And that's where I have an issue with, because then how do you build, right? How do you build a relationship if both people are not willing to take responsibility and to accept, even if you don't agree, where it could hurt the other person? Anyway, so he continues to write, for added context, when we were still not married, our relationship was toxic. Okay, so already for me, that's also alarm bell. Like, but before we jump out to judge, I think that we must really understand where society is at right now. And having interacted with a lot of people in relationships, I think generally a lot of people are actually really toxic out there. And it's just a normal thing for them. And I think more than bashing people for being toxic, I think it's for me an eye opener and an alarm bell to say, okay, clearly we need more systems and structures and communities in place where people can see what is actually really healthy. Saying that people are toxic, but then not showing them what a healthy relationship looks like is kind of a double-edged sword, because the fact of the matter is you don't know what you don't know. And I'm sure a lot of people, obviously not everyone, but when given the opportunity for something better, would jump at the opportunity, right? So I don't like to just jump and go to judgments and say, oh, well, you knew that the relationship was toxic in the first place. It's easy to talk when you're not in the situation. But anyway, I read on, and it says, it was it was out in the open, and everybody knew what was happening between us, good or bad, mostly from her side, because again, I'm not the post type of guy. Even my Facebook doesn't have my real face as the DP, and I only post funny videos or oops, I forgot to that. I learned from that and told her we would change our ways and be quiet about our life, good or bad. In which she agreed yes. Adult conversations, adults agreeing not to force my views upon my other half. Right now, I've blocked her, and well, we will be seeing each other later when she gets home, or not, as I work from 1 p.m. to 3 a.m. I have two jobs to make ends meet. This is the only time I have free as my boss made me go home early due to our website being down and I have nothing to do. I'm a social media manager marketer during the day and I work with the Grab during the night until 3 a.m. So yeah, I work. So I am so the am I the AITA, right? There may be some loopholes in the story, but feel free to ask me that. I'm not totally okay right now. Hence, the storytelling sucks and in a roundabout way. I'm also diagnosed with severe depression and is currently under medication. I don't know if that can add anything. My wife doesn't have any of those. She's perfectly of sound mind and body, I think. Update. One, I waited for her, and when she got out the car, she acted like nothing happened. No conversation about the argument, like it didn't even exist. Just sounds crazy. This is just crazy. Honestly, it is crazy to me. It is crazy on so many levels. Um, I mean, first of all, the foundation of the relationship in the beginning. We should not ignore red flags when you get into a relationship. That's the first thing. But even if you ignored red flags and you're in a relationship, I do believe that even after you're married and you have kids, if both of the parties really want to make it work, they can make it work. And I think for me, it's not about memes. It's the real issue. It's the real issue is not that, oh, it's just about a Reddit post, but it's the thing that I've been saying over and over again. More and more social media is invading private spaces and it's making it very hard for relationships to survive. You'll know that, especially in intimate spaces, it requires some sort of privacy, it requires a safety. And I don't think that it is healthy to always just air your private stuff in public, right? Because then it's public narrative versus private agreement. And then what do you do? When you guys make up and then this person has this perception and they left with walking with this thing over their head that, oh, you're the guy, or just casting a shadow on their character. And I think that a lot of the times we need to think about what we post about the people that are close to us, what this can do to them, what if it affected his career, all of these things. I think it's we should be so aware and be very protective of our relationships and marriage spaces, and especially because they've asked you for this. So for me, number one, the issue is respect, right? There's no respect in that relationship. Two, inferiority complex, low self-esteem. I mean, why would you rate yourself a two? You don't need to rate yourself a two, and already that he's put her on such a pedestal. And I mean, it's amazing. A lot of partners do that with each other to say, oh, he's so amazing. But already it comes across to me that he already doesn't really believe a lot in himself. And then this number three, that that already he's going on about the fact that he has depression and she seems perfect to him, and I think that's really very much the issue. And that's already brings cracks in the relationship. I think the most important thing to take away from this is you can't give from an empty cup. You cannot give what you don't have. And sometimes, and I know the self love culture sometimes has taken it too far. But also, the Word of God says, and I like the scripture that I actually read. It says that you ought to love somebody as you love yourself. Now, if you don't love yourself, how are you going to give away that love? And I think loving yourself and really knowing your value as a human being is absolutely pivotal and instrumental to be healthy and to be in a healthy relationship, because then you're able to know what you'll stand for, know what you won't stand for, and then in some cases you don't even have to enter into a marriage or relationship at all, because you see the red flags and it's not just about you, it's your peace, it's your destiny. It's literally your destiny. Marrying the wrong person can alter your destiny and not enable you to fulfill what you're supposed to achieve and fulfill in this life. So yes, it's absolutely important. That's the first thing. And secondly, when you are in a relationship, both have to fight to protect each other. I'm not saying that you should let things slide, but it's very dangerous airing your dirty laundry in public. And then what? Do you go back every time there's an argument and just say, oh, okay, it's fine, we've made up now? No, I think I don't agree with that. And so, I was very glad when I read this Reddit post because then it also makes me realize just how much social media has changed relationships and also genuinely how people are struggling, right, in relationship. Now, in this particular post, as I said earlier, three lines were crossed. They broke their privacy pact. So it's not just about privacy, but they broke an agreement which I think wasn't unreasonable. Um, it's creating suspicion about the spouse, which I think is not a protective act to do in a relationship. And then it's dismissed his trauma triggers. Granted, it's not about that he has trauma. I think that separately he has to deal with the trauma. But still, like, why would you expose yourself and be so vulnerable like that? There's so many bad actors there and talk much of your children. Well, I know we love to post things about children, but there are a lot of creeps out there. Now, where I think he also went wrong, so I'm just going to check my notes, I don't ramble, is retaliation. I don't think that that was the best way to retaliate. But I'm also going to push back and say, well, perhaps, he was that desperate. And again, it goes back to the foundation of the relationship, his fears, his concerns not being validated. And so it's not necessarily that the retaliation is bad, more than the fact that he's not being heard, right? And then public counter post. You kind of stoop down to the same level by doing that the same thing. And I always say, how you react in a particular situation, even though you're right, can literally discredit what you're trying to say just because of the way you behaved. And then I guess, blocking her before the conversation. Now, that's so on his side, those are the issues that I wouldn't have done. But also, I think the most important principle is not to process private pain on public platforms. But I'm also glad that I read this post because then I think it can help us really start understanding why we need to be careful. We need to be aware of AI that's coming. We need to be aware of how social media is making us interact, right? Because at the end of the day, if the future is going to be human spaces, we need to start getting ready and start fixing some stuff and fix it now. Now, I think that my verdict is, originally she breached the trust, she breached the privacy. you know Relationship is, it's a lot about having to just consider the other person better than yourself. A healthy relationship, and it's hard work. Oh my goodness, sometimes you're gonna have to bite your tongue, sometimes you're gonna be like, oh, not say anything. But it's the price, it's the cost that you have to pay to be in a healthy, peaceful relationships. They do exist, you guys. It is possible out there. I think that one rule that's practical takeaways is no indirect posting about your spouse, right? And I don't necessarily think she was posting indirectly about him. I don't, that's not the sense I'm getting. But also for me, it really makes me also question what's her mindset. Her mindset is, because if you keep watching the stuff, like, you become what you believe. You get what you believe. And so I think she was wrong. She was the first one that she was wrong. I think he didn't react and respond well. Okay, I think there definitely has to be boundaries when it comes to social media and relationships, right? Just there, let there be some sort of decency and dignity and privacy. And I think that if you're somebody who doesn't mind posting, but the other person does, it's probably safer to just go with private because you're really exposing the other person for a life they're not ready for. and question your own motive. Why do you want to post so much? What is this thing that you have to post about your life? You need to turn around and search in yourself. Now, I don't disagree with posting. People share their posts, people share their family, they share special moments. That's true, but that's also something that I think people should also start doing a deep introspection about. I'll end off with this. I think that strong relationships need privacy and, excuse me, they need safety in order for there to be freedom of expression and for growth. And the internet, I think, should never know more about your relationship than you. Um, I don't know. What would you feel disrespected by? Would you have felt disrespected by those posts? Is privacy in marriage a right or control, or should spouses ever post about conflict? That's pretty interesting. Let me know your thoughts, and we will look at some more Reddit AITA posts in this. I would say no. I do not think he is AITA. I don't. I don't necessarily agree with his approach, but then again, I'm not sure if she would have gotten a message if he didn't do that. I guess, and finally, I think there are already cracks. There are already deeper underlying issues. The fact that she just comes and pretends like they didn't have an argument at all, that's already red flags for me. That just screams avoidance. And if you want a healthy relationship, it's you. The truth shall set you free. Anyway, until next time, bye bye.